Welcome back to another episode of Next Chapter Retirees. I'm here today with a fellow YouTuber, Sabado. I'm fortunate to have him. Those of you that tuned in last week, I was here with Joe last week. So again, I'm fortunate to have two fellow YouTubers back-to-back weeks. So we're going to get started today with Sabado, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his channel, and then we're going to get into the questioning there. Welcome, Sabado.
Well, thank you for having me. Next chapter. I'm privileged to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue to get the message out to people. There's a lot of people that aren't given or don't have the conversations about the opportunities that sit out there, aren't talked to about investing and retirement and the opportunity to retire. And so I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to some of your viewers. And again, just a little bit about my channel. I'm Sabado, and my channel is Ask Sabado, the Everyday Retiree. And the idea, just much like yourself, is just to let normal people know that they can do what a lot of people believe to be extraordinary, which is retire early. And I was fortunate enough to have retired at the age of 51. And I've been retired now for almost 3 years, so about 2.5 years now. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
To all my viewers, new subscribers, I promise you, if you go to his channel, subscribe, you will not be disappointed when you retire. So what was your profession, and when exactly did you retire?
I retired as the Chief Human Resources Officer for a healthcare organization. And I retired back in September 2023. So I was 51 at the time, and it's been quite the journey. It's been about a little less than or more than, I haven't done the number on the months, but about 2.5 years.
What motivated you to pursue that profession or that line of work?
It's funny, and I talk about it a lot in my videos, but when I was 22 years old, I had a friend of mine, one of my best friends, a guy, I call him the 8084. His name's Bobby. That's all beeper language. Anyway, long story short, he gave me a book for my 22nd birthday. And I had two choices. I was either going to, go and have a serious conversation about why are you giving me a book? We need to be out partying like rock stars, or I could read the book. And the book was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I read the book.
Good
And
book.
one of the things it talked about was having a personal mission statement. And so it got me asking myself, when I'm 90 years old, what is it that I want to be able to say that I did? And so I came up with a personal mission statement. And that personal mission statement is to uplift the human condition in any way that I can. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't have any idea what that was going to look like. And so I started working in elementary schools as a counselor, and I stopped that and eventually realized that I was going to make more money because, at the end of the day, I know money is just a satisfier or dissatisfier, but it in my mind, it was going to make a lot of things a lot easier. So I
Yes.
went into recruiting, got laid off as a recruiter in 2001, back in the day when we had the tech bubble that burst, and
Yep.
I was able to parlay that into a career in human resources because it was kind of the same thing, and stuck with that ever since because I had the opportunity to not only uh, help people in their day-to-day job, but I was behind the curtain. And so a lot of those conversations that are had about different people in the same context, I was able to inform those conversations. And so when people would say that a woman is being aggressive, I could say, well, no, she's being assertive because she's standing up for herself. And I was able to affect change with a broad group with thousands and thousands of people across the world, just based on kind of common sense. So it was really helping me in ways that most people don't understand or don't know or weren't aware of, help change their lives and make their lives a little bit better. And
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, when I'm 90 years old, I'm looking back, I'm able to say I was able to, make the world a little bit better. I mean, none of us are perfect, and I made a bunch of mistakes, and there's a lot of things that I would do different, but I will say that there's a lot of people that are better off because at least their true voice or who they were came forward in meetings that it wouldn't have otherwise come forward in.
In the spirit of transparency, I must share with you that months ago, when I started my YouTube journey in terms of this channel, and I saw some of your videos. And somewhere along the line, I heard you mention, your background, your career field was, human resources, etc. I said, wow, I got to talk to this guy, man, because I mean, who better, right? Right, everything retirement wise, right, funnels through the human resources offices. So again, man, I thank you for everything that you do, and again, I just want to thank you again for being here. So definitely, you share some great information. So my next question is, if you could start over, what would you do different to prepare for retirement?
It's funny you asked that question because the first thing that I would say is I would have foregone my whole situation with my ex-wife and married my current wife now and moved. But I think that everything that's ever happened in the world is because of everything else that's ever happened in the world, and that everything that's going to happen in the world is because of everything that's going on right now in the world. And so it's hard for me to think about things that I would do different because I think everything that was done up to this point has prepared me for and will impact everything going forward.
Mhm.
That's not to say that I didn't make mistakes, and it's not to say that there were things that I would want to do different. So I probably would have not allowed some of the lifestyle creep that I had. There was a time where um, I was associated with people that were really focused on things and
Yeah,
never had things. Things weren't that important. People were more important. But I allowed others to influence me in ways that I bought things that I couldn't afford and had to take money out of my retirement accounts to put down payments on houses and get out of debt and stuff like that. But what that's allowed me to do is it's given me the perspective to really help others. So again, those are things that I would do different, but they're things that helped inform who I am today, which I think help for conversations like this for those people that don't have somebody else to give them that information that maybe is going to be helpful for them to in crafting their journey, because I've made the mistakes, came out on the other side. And
yeah,
I think there's also a value in being able to say you can make mistakes, you could start late, you could make bad decisions, you can do all this stuff and still end out on the right side, because it's not, as a friend of mine used to always say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish, and the goal is to finish well.
yeah.
And here we are.
What were your biggest concerns coming up to retirement? I know I had my share of mines, like that I really want to retire, and serve relative. Did you have any concerns up to retirement? Like, hey, actually pulling the trigger, you being an HR guy?
Well, part of being and a lot of people don't realize this, but part of being a successful senior level, executive level person, it's not about actually doing the work. It's being able to plan,
Yeah,
put the pieces together, and get over the fact or get over that analysis paralysis, because there's always going to be, there's this physicist that says two things can never touch because there's always a halfway point,
right.
right? So there you can continue, and there's this infinite number of halfway points between any two. Well, it's like that when I'm planning something, because there's always something else. And
Yes.
what was tough for me was honestly the financial pieces.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I wanted to retire, and this is backwards for most people, because I think most people it's less about the retirement itself, or it's less about the money, and it's more about the emotional pieces. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I'm gonna
Right.
be less of a man or less of a person because I wasn't able to. I'm not working and I'm useless and stuff. But I always knew that I'm out here trying to change the world, and that my goal and my mission statement is to uplift the human condition.
Here we go.
But the two things that scare me the most in the world are colon cancer and homelessness.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing that I wanted to avoid was creating a situation where I may potentially become homeless. So that's a long way of saying that money was the issue. But one of the things that we did early on that I think really helped kickstart some of the conversation was I of a financial advisor. And it's less about the percentage of money that I'm paying this financial advisor, and it's less about the dollars and cents of it, but it's more about the peace of mind, because I didn't grow up talking about a bunch of money and having money. My mom taught me about checking accounts and savings. So I don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to say I was completely ignorant, but when you start getting into the details, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. So having somebody who's a professional that was able to go through each of my concerns, it was phenomenal. And I'll tell you, before I retired, I had 8 conversations in like a 4-month period with my financial advisor, going through every single detail. And
Yeah.
again, you're talking to a guy that grew up in the hood in the 80s and
Yeah.
saw people that went from being your friends to living under a bridge because they were smoking crack. So you
Understood.
saw that transition to people becoming homeless. And so in order for me to put myself in a situation where I'm not going to work and have trust in the systems that I had put money into for such a long time, it was kind of a big deal. So once I got over that, I said, look, either I'm going to continue to work and I'm going to continue to be burnt out, I'm going to continue to be frustrated, I'm going to continue dealing
Yeah.
with these toxic work environments, or I'm going to trust the planning that I went through up to that point. And so there was a lot of planning, a lot of conversation, and a lot of soul searching just to get there, and understanding that I'm not retiring to get away from something. I want to be able to start moving the world forward, moving the needle in the world on my own terms instead of somebody else's. So it's not hard to overcome, but again, I think we all have to get to a point where we we take in new information and start to really assimilate to that new information and understand that our realities are continually changing because there's constant evolution in the world. And I think a lot of times we tend to get caught into the old realities. And who
Right.
I am today is different than who I was in the 80s and 90s when I was watching friends get caught up in different situations.
Uh, you definitely transitioned to the next chapter, as I like to call it. What accomplishment are you most proud of looking back over your career? Is there anything that stands out in your career that you are most proud of?
There's a couple things I'll talk about that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
Number one, I had the opportunity. I worked for what at one time was the second largest employer in the world behind Walmart.
Wow.
And I worked with one other person, and we developed a leadership curriculum called the Essentials of Leadership. And we developed it, started off with 2 classes. One was a leadership class, the other one was a teamwork class,
Mhm.
team leadership class. We rolled that out, and ultimately, we were either going to lose our jobs or this was going to be successful. Well, that became the global standard, which became a curriculum of about 26 classes over the courses of about
Wow.
6 or 7 years. And we were in 13 countries around the world. I mean, we were in places like Korea, we were in India, we were in Europe, we were in Brazil, we were in Canada. And so when you hear me talk about being in Canada a couple times a month, that's why. In my
Wow.
videos, I say that, but that's why. I was Puerto Rico. We ended up having a bigger team of people. And what's interesting about something, a context or a content matter like leadership, is that leadership is less about business, but it's more about how you live your life and creating purpose and creating meaning, and not just your own life, but in how you motivate others to meet their own goals by having in a win-win situation. So there was a point where I'm not a big social media guy, but one day I go into Facebook and I see all these messages with people saying that, you changed my life. And
Yeah.
I don't do things for the accolades. I do things because I think they need to be done. But I'm going to be honest with you, it felt good to
Yeah.
see that I was having a desired impact. I think the other thing that I'm really proud of, and this is maybe a little bit more technical,
Mhm.
is I'm not a guy that does things because I want people to come back and say, "Hey, Saab, you did this and that was great." But I was working at an organization that it's funny. I went into this organization and they were underpaying people and there's a really toxic work environment. And I would try to figure out, well, why aren't we paying people more? Why aren't we doing these things? And my CEO wanted to do it, but nobody else really just took the horns and ran with it.
Mhm.
So to make a long story even longer, I was able to embark on a project with the support of my CEO. So I want to give him some credit for that at least. But um, with the CEO, and I was able to do an organization wide compensation analysis. So we looked at everybody's jobs, looked at different levels. So that way people had career ladders they could go into. We we instead of looking at other organizations that were small, we looked at organizations that were like for like organizations, and it turned out that we gave everybody in the organization, on average, and it's, averages are higher and lower, but on average about a 20% increase. So I was pretty happy about that. And the one other thing that I want to say that I'm proud of, and this isn't a career thing, is, and I don't want to self promote because again it's not about that, but is
Mhm.
the fact that I've been able to find an audience that can use the information that I have to share and able to take my experience in ways that's able to help them by way of this platform on YouTube. Because again, when I started, in full transparency, my wife would say, Sab, you should start a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
And I'm like, nobody wants to hear me. And she said,
I
you have
do.
a lot to say. and it started off, and at first I thought, it's not going to work. And your guy Joe, the one you had on a couple weeks ago, I sent him a message, and he just said, "Look, you gotta keep going. You gotta keep going,"
Yeah,
and gave me
yes,
the confidence because he's saying, your stuff is good. Next thing you know, here I am with, 4,500 people,
right.
and I get 75, 80 comments on every video I put up, and thumbs up and likes because it resonates with people. And it's not that I'm trying to have this big audience and be a super YouTuber, because it's not about me. It's about other people. But again, that's another. So when I look at the things I'm most proud of, kind of as a whole, I bring that into it. And I say as a career because my career is really uplifting the human condition in any way that I can,
Yeah,
not necessarily as an HR person, but I was able to, in each step of the way, really make people's lives better. So that's something that really is, that's when I'm 90 years old, I could look back and say, those are things that I did for others, that somebody was able to buy bread, milk, and cheese, perhaps because I was able to, um, do whatever it is that I was able to do, or they felt better about the work they were doing, or something like that.
again, another shout out to Joe who was on last week, because he obviously, again, he's the inspiration to me, but he also encouraged me to continue doing what I'm doing. And another shout out back to you, Sabado, for all of the executive leaders across the country and across the world for all the great things that you do, man. So
Well, and I appreciate you. Just trying to get the message out.
yeah,
I don't think people realize how tireless it is to get in front of these cameras. I mean, this is great because I'm talking to another person, but
yeah,
to come up with content, to be consistent, and to say things that you have no idea how it's going to be received. And
yeah,
I think it takes a special person to be able to do that. So I really do want to say that, I watch every video you put out. I appreciate what you're doing. And I
thank you.
think that there's a lot of people that are going to benefit, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people on YouTube, a lot of money people. There's a lot of
Yeah,
financial advisors, financial planners. There's a lot of young people that are telling you, don't eat any cheese for a month, or don't eat avocado toast and you'll be able to retire at 25.
yeah,
But there's very few of us that are just normal cats that went to work every day, dealt with all the BS at work,
yep,
stuck with whatever the plan was, and then ended up on the other side, that are telling their story. And it gets even smaller when you start looking at people that look like us. And I think that what you run into, and this is funny because I ran into this on my channel, is that what you start to realize is that we all have the same issues.
yes, sir.
So people that look like us, people that don't, everybody else. And what people want is they want the message. And
Yes,
so
sir.
for you to see somebody else that's out there putting out the message, I think it's remarkable, because you're actually talking to actual individuals in a way that I'm just kind of giving information based on my experience that some people may or may not feel like they relate to. So again, my hat's off to you.
A lot of great information out there. So, how has your daily routine changed since retirement? I think I know something about golf clubs, but anyway,
No, it's funny because the typical day is not typical, but it is typical because
yeah,
one of the things I realized very early on is that I had to put boundaries around my time, and I had to focus my time. And so I identified people that were taking but not giving, and
hmm
I really put boundaries up around that. I took things that are important, which are my health, my time, and my relationship with my wife. I put those at the forefront, and I defined my mission. So everything anchors within my mission, my personal mission statement, and my time, my relationship with my wife, and those things. So what I do on a normally, I get up in the morning, and because of this YouTube channel, I'm a couple of days a week. So I record content. I usually try to record right at the time. I try to do things weeks and weeks in advance.
Mhm.
Um, but I wake up, I'll look at my phone to see if there's any comments, because I respond to every comment. I want to make sure people have the comments. I don't play a lot of golf. I mean, I play probably once a week, maybe twice a week. It just depends on what's
Yeah.
going on. And part of the reason I play golf so much is, after saying I don't play golf that often, but is because I've always believed that if you want to make change in the world, you got to take steps. And it's like people want to retire, but they don't want to save money. Then you're not going to retire. But my doctor at one point, and this is really kind of deep information, so we'll keep it between you and I and 100 million of our closest friends on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
I went to the doctor in 2021. I'm 6'8", and so I went to the doctor in 2021. I was set 276 pounds, and my blood sugars were high, my cholesterol was high, all these things were high. My doctor told me that if you just lose a little bit of weight, then those numbers will start getting better. And so in about 2 years, I went from 276 pounds to today. I weighed myself. I'm at 240. My
Woo.
levels are better, and all of that. And so I try to I golf so I could walk, and
Yeah.
it gets me out there walking golf courses. I spend a lot of time on the YouTube channel. One of the things I've implemented is I implemented my chats with Sabado,
Uh-huh.
because I think there's a value in not just hearing a talking head on YouTube, but to actually having some interaction with somebody. So for a couple of things: one, so they know I'm a real person, and two, they start to gain trust in the fact that information is good information. It's not all about somebody trying to sell them something.
Very good.
Then I also have meetings. I think I've mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it here, but in other videos, I've went to the university. I live out on the left coast, so I'm in California, and the University of California has a Master Gardener program, and I have this thing about growing things and bringing life where life can be brought. Because again, I think it uplifts the human condition. And so, as a Master Gardener, one of the things that our charter is, and one of the reasons I joined, is that it brings gardening to all of the communities in our town. And so, and whenever you say all communities, then what that tells you is that there's probably some communities that are left out. And so I go to the communities that they say, as they would say, south of the river, and work in those communities to help people learn about growing their own food. Because
Wow.
again, when you look at health outcomes, health outcomes a lot of times are impacted by access to fresh fruits and vegetables, because people that live in the hood might only have a 7-Eleven. They don't have a grocery store down the street. And so they
Yes.
don't. So if you can grow your own tomatoes, and, easy things to grow. So I'm at neighborhood associations, schools. I'm going to be at a children's home in a few weeks, a women's shelter, and help people around those things to do that. And then I also had I spent time getting out in the community, talking to groups. I had a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, but who knows? We're on YouTube, so months go into years and all that. But my point is that I had the opportunity to give a presentation on how gardening can help in the management and prevention of type 2 diabetes.
Absolutely.
And so we had that. So my days are caught up with either exercising and golfing,
Good.
uh, playing, going out and doing stuff in the community. My wife and I, a couple days a week, we usually go to the casino, not because we're big gamblers, but because you get free gifts. And then what we do is we take those gifts and we give those to the neighborhood food pantries, so people that are less fortunate have the opportunity to get stuff. You see, so it's my whole life is around how can I give who I am to other people, as opposed to just taking and taking. So whatever the opportunity is. So the easy way to answer that question is that there's no typical day, but every day is really tied up with, how do I do something that's going to enhance the lives of others?
Very
What
good.
can I do to help other people? What can I do to inspire people that may be inspired by my story? Or how can I help people learn ways to help themselves? Because a lot of the code switching that happens comes from, well, people just need to pull up themselves by their bootstraps. Well, you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have any boots. So let me give you some boots,
Yes,
so at
sir.
least you can do that. So it's how can I help? And it's women, it's people of color, it's people in disenfranchised communities, it's immigrants, it's whoever it is, and whoever I'm fortunate enough to have tune in to my YouTube channel, because again, the idea is you can do it. It may not happen in the format that you want it to happen, but eventually we're all going to retire, because we're either going to get sick, we're going to get old, and all of that. And then, and really the goal for me is, how do I do that and stay off of prescription medication? So I take no prescription medications, and I'm 54 years old. So
Yeah.
I'm proud of that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how my days wrap up after I've retired, and I'm doing, so it's busy, but it's busy in the business of my life, and trying to change the world.
Uh, Not only do you share some great information, but it's inspirational, man. To hear all the things that you mentioned your wife as well, and giving back, man. We need more Sabados of the world, man. So thank you again.
Well, my wife is really, it's hard to explain. I was talking to my wife yesterday,
Uh-huh.
and she was talking about something that she was doing. And I said, that's great that you're doing that, and I'm proud of you for doing that. And her response to me was, I'm not doing it for the accolades. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And this is my wife talking to me, right? So it's like, so we just, it's like, don't, we it's she asked me, what do I want for Christmas, and just put it on the Amazon list or something. I said, I don't want anything for Christmas, because
Yeah.
what I want is for the world to be a little bit better of a place, because we're in it. And again, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I think we all have, but yeah, and it's not a matter of trying to make up for any mistakes, but it's a matter of, it's we're always, they say the only constant is change, right? So the
Yeah.
only constant is change. And, I agree with that. But at the end of the day, yesterday is gone, and the rest of your life is sitting right here in front of you. So how do you want to shape that and do that?
Wanting the world to be a better place. We certainly can't order that on next day delivery from Amazon.
You got that right.
Yeah, man. Okay. What is it that you like most about retirement? I know we talked a lot about, retirement, some of the things that you do. If it's anything that stands out, what do you like most about retirement?
The thing I like most about it is the freedom to beat to my own drum.
Yes.
Working in healthcare, working in hospitals, working at nonprofit organizations, you find that people might have kind of the same overarching mission, but a lot of it's really self-serving. And my thing is it's not about me; it's about the people I have the opportunity to help and serve, and the change that I can help for others.
Yeah.
And and what gets frustrating sometimes is that just the nature of organizations and companies, they have to look out for their interests, and that's going to shape how you do what it is that you do. And sometimes the way that you do things is going to be different. And so I appreciate, I just like the freedom. I like the ability to do what I want to do when I want to
Yes,
do it,
sir.
and then sometimes do nothing at all.
Yeah.
Just chill. So I think it's the freedom that really I really like about post retirement life.
And the last question is, what wisdom would you give someone uh, approaching retirement, right? Someone that may be 5 or 10 years out. What wisdom would you, Sabado, share with them?
I would say there's a couple fronts, because I think there's people that are 5 or 10 years from retirement that don't know they're 5 or 10 years from retirement, because something is going to happen that they're not aware is going to happen. And then I think there's people that are planning that feel like they haven't planned enough. And then there's going to be people that plan. I think that one of the things that happens a lot is people focus a lot on a number. And one of my most popular videos was, you don't need $1 million. And it's
Ah,
funny, because then I get challenged, like, well, what's your number? And I say, well, my number is going to be different than somebody else's number, because my guy told me I could live off of this. Now, that doesn't mean that I have this or I have that, but that's the way my expenses are. But I would suggest to everybody, get out of, when you look at debts, I think there's things like houses that appreciate, and I think there are certain assets that what you owe down the road is going to be less than what the value of the asset. So something like a house. But like toxic assets that you don't need, don't go into debt. High interest credit cards, I always say that's the opposite of compound interest. Get away from
Ooh,
those. And the reality is I understand that there are people that are in circumstances where they have to use credit cards to eat and stuff, but that's not most people. And I think the other one is for people to do a realistic assessment of themselves. There's a channel that I watch, a guy called Frank Talks Money,
yep,
and Frank is like in your face, holding you accountable, telling you what not to do. It's a little different than my approach, and I think that's just because I've been corporatized. But it's you got to hold yourself accountable, figure out where you want to go, and then figure out what you want to do it. Because the reality is that I'm not saying that every time a person wants to get somewhere, they're going to get there. But if you don't even take the steps, then you're getting in your own way. And that's a problem. And the one thing I've always said is I never want to get in my own way. And then the last thing I would say is don't be afraid of talking to a professional.
yeah,
I have this concept of jumping over pennies for dollars. A lot of us will say, I don't want to spend this for that. I don't want to spend $100 to ask a question about this. But if by paying that $100 it makes you $20,000, then it's a no-brainer. You
yeah,
see, and so if you're trying to figure out, even if you go for a couple of sessions and you don't have to get an advisor that is assets under management. You can get one that charges by the hour, but have somebody look at your plan, figure out what you're thinking, because there's two things that an advisor will do. Number one, uh, they'll give you an understanding of maybe some of the pieces that you're missing.
yes,
So,
sir.
for example, people miss healthcare, people miss long-term care,
Long
people
term,
miss different ways to mitigate risk. As an example, one of the things that my financial advisor told me was, I said, I want to put some money away that's a little bit more liquid that we could use, but I don't want to get caught in taxes. He says, well, one of the ways that you could make money in a market where interest rates are coming down is you can make interest-free dividends
yes,
on
sir.
tax-free municipals. So as the
Sir.
interest rates go down, the yields on those go up, and those yields are going to be higher than the dividends are going to be higher than what you're going to get in your high interest savings account, because your high interest savings account interest rates are going down and
Yes,
you
sir.
don't get taxed on it. So I said, all right, that's as liquid as I need it to be, and
Yeah,
it's there. Now I'm not saying I'm not giving advice. I'm not a financial planner, never been one on TV, but those are things that I never knew, and those are things that he knows. And when COVID happened, the markets go down, I call him up and say, is this the time that I need to panic? He says, no, you've got X number of dollars over here. Now you can buy some dividend paying stock. So that way, as the prices go up, because the fair market value is going to go up. Now you have the opportunity to make not just the money that you make when it comes back, but you can also get dividends on that. Those are things that I had no idea
yeah,
of. And so I always recommend to people, talk to a professional, because I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up talking about how money works, and based on what I see on YouTube and everywhere else, most people don't have an understanding of how it works. So I think talk to a professional,
yeah,
I guess the last thing I'll say is that on all these YouTube channels, everybody's an expert on everything,
yeah,
and just being somebody that goes to the primary sources, a lot of people are giving their opinions. I think what YouTube does well is it gives you understanding that certain things might exist, which then give you the opportunity to go and research specific things after you hear that information. So like I talk about tax-free municipal bonds. Now tax-free municipal bonds exist. So now what you can do is you can go out and do some research on tax-free municipal bonds to see if they're right for you. But do the research, understand it. That's why it's important to talk to a professional, so that way you don't find yourself in the blind. And then as you set up your plan, you don't want to set up your plan, I liken it to golf. You don't want to take a bunch of extra shots on a hole and
yeah,
say that you have a 5 handicap, then get into a tournament and blow up on every hole,
yeah,
because now you weren't being honest with yourself. You don't want to have a plan that you think is manufactured in your mind to be a good plan just to retire and find out you have to go back to work, because that doesn't just deal with you financially, that deals with your psyche, and that's a whole nother can of worms. So be honest with yourself and keep it real. That's it. With yourself.
I appreciate you, man. You're certainly speaking the language that I want to hear. You're speaking my language, and I'm thankful again. I'm sure several of my viewers, your viewers, new viewers will watch this video and be informed as well as being inspired. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode, Next Chapter Retiree. Once again, I want to give a shout out and thank you to Sabado. And if we ever want to do anything in the future, with me or with you, Sabado, I'm here. I'm happy to collaborate with you at any time.
Hey, I just thank you for having me on. Again, I really appreciate the fact that there's another group of people that are out there having these conversations. I got to tell you though,
Yeah.
It's like there's a song called "Scenario" by a Tribe Called Quest, and he
Yeah.
talks about three black brothers in the public eye, and he says something. I'm going to tell you why, and so it's great because I think it's good for people to hear stuff from just normal people, like
Yes,
just
sir.
regular people. So I appreciate, I watch your videos. I like what you're doing. I
Yeah. Appreciate
appreciate the fact that you're on there. And I think that, you might hear some of the emotional pieces from me and you might hear some of the financial pieces from Joe, but then they can come to you and you can have a conversation and talk.
Yeah.
You're talking to actual individuals, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of rounds it out. So I think there's a space for all of us and there's
Absolutely.
value in going all the way around. So I appreciate and applaud the work that you're doing.
All right. Thanks again, Sabado. For all the viewers, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the content if you like it. And if you have comments, please feel free to leave a comment, and I'm always happy to answer you back. Thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you tune in to the next episode. Thank you.